Your prayers are not out of love. They are born out of your absolute terror of the grave. You are not worshipping God. You are merely trying to bribe Him because you are too cowardly to face your own end. Every time you drop to your knees, it is not an act of devotion, it is a pathetic, desperate deal with death. Real religion begins only when you stop begging for your survival and dare to look into the abyss. Hello, my beloved friends. I look into your eyes and I see a deep, unuttered longing. You are searching for something, running from one temple to another, from one church to another, bending your knees, bowing your heads, and crying out to an empty sky. But have you ever stopped for a single moment to look at your prayers? Have you ever had the courage to look at the naked reality of what you call your religious devotion? I tell you, your prayers are not born out of love. They cannot be. They are born out of a cold, naked, shivering fear. They are nothing but a cowardly business transaction with the unknown, a desperate and pathetic deal you are trying to strike with death. You are not praying out of gratitude for this magnificent existence. You are praying because you are terrified of the dark valley that awaits you at the end of your life. Your ego is trembling before the absolute certainty of its own annihilation, and so it invents a God, it invents a paradise, it invents a complex theological system to protect itself. Look at the way you live. You live in a constant internal division, a permanent state of schizophrenia created by your priests and your politicians. From the very moment of your birth, you are conditioned to reject what is natural and to hanker after the artificial. You are told that your body is dirty, that your instincts are animalistic, that your sexuality is a sin, and that to be truly spiritual you must deny the earth. This is the ultimate poison that has been fed to humanity for thousands of years. You have become a victim of a great conspiracy, an institutionalized machinery that thrives on your guilt. Because if you feel guilty, you become weak. If you feel unworthy, you lose your dignity, your pride, your inner alignment. And a man who has lost his inner strength becomes a slave. He becomes a perfectly obedient robot, ready to follow any political leader, ready to bow down before any priest, ready to be driven into the marketplace or onto the battlefield. As we gather here today to share these deep insights, to pour our hearts into each other like an overflowing cup of honey, I invite you to become a true companion on this journey. If this resonance touches your being, if it shatters your comfortable lies and brings a flash of light to your darkness, then take a moment to engage with this space. Share your reflections in the comments below. Subscribe to this channel and share this video with those you care about. If you feel an abundance of gratitude and wish to support the continuity of these teachings, to help this flame reach more sleeping souls across the earth, you are always welcome to click the join button to become a member, offer your support through super thanks, or explore our collection of deeply transformative ebooks. But let this act of sharing be like the blossoming of a rose, an expression of your overflowing joy, not a commercial transaction, not a business deal. For centuries, the priest has been the supreme exploiter of human psychology. In my view, the priest belongs to the most dangerous profession in the world, far more destructive than any other. At least a common laborer or a creative artisan gives you something real in return for your currency. But the priest gives you nothing but hot air, nothing but unproved hypotheses and consoling lies. The priest has built his entire empire on your fear of death and your anxiety about the future. He stands like a cold, impenetrable wall between you and existence, telling you that you cannot relate to the divine directly. The institutionalized church tells you that direct communication with the ultimate is a sin, that you must go through the mediator, that you must use their maps, their scriptures, their rituals. They have turned prayer into a commodity, a marketplace transaction. Why do they do this? Because their entire livelihood, their status, their power elites depend on your blindness. If you open your eyes, the priest loses his job. If you become aware, the politician loses his followers. If you reclaim your authentic individuality, the entire structure of social exploitation falls apart like a house of cards. Therefore, they have created a manufactured man, a man who is alienated from his own nature, who fights against his own body, who represses his own passions. Every traditional religion is based on belief, and I tell you, belief means blindness. There is no belief in the world that is not blind. A man with eyes does not believe in the light. He knows it is there. He doesn't need to read a holy scripture to convince himself that the sun has risen. Only a blind man believes in the light because he cannot see it, because he is ignorant of it. Belief exists only in ignorance, and all your traditional churches and temples are monuments raised in honor of human blindness. They give you ready-made truths, pre-packaged consolations, so that you never have to make the effort to see for yourself. They don't want you to be explorers. They want you to be sheep. They want a shepherd who can drive you, who can control you, who can use you as fuel for their wars and their political ambitions. Friedrich Nietzsche, one of the greatest philosophers and born mystics the world has ever known, saw this clearly. Through his spokesman, Zarathustra, he proclaimed a truth that shattered the very foundations of Western theology. He looked at the old saint living in the forest, singing songs to a hypothetical God, and he said to his heart, "Could it be possible that this old man has not yet heard in his forest that God is dead?" When Zarathustra says that God is dead, he is saying that the old, traditional, life-negative concept of a creator is no longer viable. That God was never alive in the first place. He was just an invention of human fear, an artificial projection of the ego to protect itself from the absolute reality of death. Traditional religion tells you to betray the earth, to renounce the world, to despise your body, so that you can inherit a super-terrestrial paradise after you die. They condemn the simple pleasures of life, the playfulness, the laughter, the dance, and they promise you that the same things you deny yourself here will be available to you millionfold in heaven. Mohammedanism tells you to renounce alcohol here, but promises you rivers of wine in paradise. It tells you to control your sexuality here, but promises you beautiful, eternally young virgins in the other world. This is absolute insanity. It is a supreme deception. It is an appeal to your greed, a commercial negotiation under the guise of holiness. You are using your virtue, your morality, your fasts, and your prayers as stepping stones, as investments for a cosmic lottery. This is not religiousness. This is business par excellence. Zarathustra is the only religious founder in the history of man who is absolutely life affirmative. He is not against life, he is for life. His religion is a religion of celebration, of intense, passionate rejoicing in the world. He says to you, remain true to the earth and do not believe those who speak to you of super-terrestrial hopes. They are poisoners, whether they know it or not. To blaspheme the earth is now the most dreadful offense. I am in total agreement with Zarathustra. My vision for you is not renunciation, but rejoicing. This earth is your mother. You are not thrown into this world as an outsider, as a stranger. You have grown out of this earth just as the trees grow, just as the flowers blossom, just as the birds sing. You are an organic part of this cosmic whole. The universe has realized its own awareness through you. It is celebrating its own being through your eyes, through your heart, through your song and your dance. To condemn this life, to call this world an illusion or a place of punishment, is a great insult to existence itself. But your mind is conditioned to love difficult tasks. The ego always wants something impossible because it can only exist through a struggle. If a goal is easy, if it is right here and now, the ego has no interest in it. The ego wants to achieve power, money, respectability, or spirituality. Wherever there is a desire for more, remember that is the language of the ego. Traditional religions have attracted millions of people precisely because they gave the ego unnatural ideals, impossible goals, and arduous disciplines. They told you to fight your nature, to suppress your sexuality, to torture your body. And the more you tortured yourself, the more righteous you felt, the more your ego was strengthened in its holiness. You became a perfect camel, a beast of burden, kneeling down, asking to be laden with the heaviest load of dead scriptures, moral codes, and ancient traditions. Tantra and Zarathustra say exactly the opposite. Easy is right. Right is easy. When you are utterly relaxed, at ease, at home in your own being, so relaxed that you have forgotten that you are at ease, you have arrived. But the ego has no interest in this relaxation, because relaxation is the death of the ego. The ego can only exist when there is tension, when there is a conflict, when you are divided against yourself. When you create a split between your body and your soul, between your matter and your spirit, you create the playground for the ego. You become a broken house, a house divided against itself, permanently paralyzed by internal friction. You spend your entire life fighting yourself, and you have no energy left to live, no energy left to love, no energy left to dance. You become a walking corpse, dragging your own skeleton from the cradle to the grave, and you call it a religious life. Look at your so-called saints. Their faces are long, pale, and completely devoid of joy. They look like fossils, dead rocks from which all life juice has been squeezed out. They cannot laugh, they cannot sing, they cannot look at a beautiful flower or a beautiful face without feeling guilty, without seeing the devil hiding somewhere. They have suppressed their anger, they have suppressed their sexuality, they have suppressed their greed, and because they have suppressed these natural energies, they are sitting on a volcano. You can see the tension in their eyes, the rigidity in their bodies, the hidden violence in their gestures. They call themselves celibate, but their minds are permanently obsessed with sex. They talk against sex 24 hours a day because they cannot think of anything else. Their celibacy is just an artificial barrier, a dangerous repression that turns their energy into a hidden perversion. Tantra says, accept whatsoever you are. You are a magnificent mystery of multidimensional energies. Do not fight with your energy. Be friendly towards it. Energy is natural. It is neither good nor bad. It is just a cosmic current flowing through you. When sex is lived naturally, with deep sensitivity, with awareness, with love, it transforms into a higher spiritual energy. It becomes the door to the ultimate consciousness. The seed may look ugly, but inside the seed are hidden the most beautiful roses. If you throw away the seed out of condemnation, you are also throwing away the potential flowers. Traditional religions have castrated humanity spiritually by forcing people to cut off their own roots. They have left you with no energy to grow into love, with no energy to move into meditation. Your prayers are just a manifestation of this inner castration. When you are in deep misery, when you are full of anxiety, when you are terrified of the unknown, you start praying. Your prayer is a cry for help from a helpless beggar. You are asking an imaginary God in the sky to give you safety, to give you security, to protect your petty ego from death. You say beautiful words, you use holy formulas, but behind those words is a hidden greed and a naked fear. You are bargaining. You are saying to God, if I follow your commandments, if I am a good boy, if I go to the church every Sunday, then you must reward me. You must give me a comfortable place in heaven. You must save me from hellfire. This is not prayer. This is naked commercialism. It is a cowardly deal you are trying to strike with existence. True prayer is not a demand. It is an overflowing of gratitude. It can happen only when you are at your center, when you are total, when you are integrated. It is not addressed to anyone in particular. It is just a fragrance arising from your being, a silent yes to the universe. When you look at the stars and your heart falls into a deep harmony with their silent movement, that is prayer. When you see a rosebud trembling with a dewdrop in the morning sun, and your soul begins to dance with the morning breeze, that is prayer. It has no purpose, no goal. It is a value in itself. It is a purposeless celebration of being alive. But to experience this true prayer, you must first have the courage to die as a camel, to die as a follower, to die as a blind believer. You must pass through a metamorphosis. Zarathustra describes the evolution of human consciousness through three symbols: the camel, the lion, and the child. The camel is the lowest state. It is the beast of burden, the faithful slave, the obedient follower who cannot say no. The camel is always ready to be loaded with borrowed knowledge, with artificial morality, with social conditionings. It lives in a vast, dry desert where nothing grows, where everything is dead. Most of humanity is still at the stage of the camel. You go to your schools, your colleges, your universities, and you become highly educated camels. You are loaded with information, with words, with theories, but your heart remains empty. Your bones are dry. There is no heartbeat in your knowledge. You are just a puppet in the hands of the dead past. If you want to grow, the camel must go through a radical transformation. It must become a lion. The lion is a revolution. The beginning of the revolution is a sacred no. The lion refuses to be a slave. It refuses to be a beast of burden. It will not allow anyone else to say to it, "Thou shalt." The dragon of traditional religion, sparkling with the golden scales of ancient values, stands in its path and says, "All values have already been created. There is no need for any "I will." Your only duty is to obey." But the spirit of the lion roars and says, "I will." The lion captures its own freedom. It becomes the lord of its own desert. It stands alone, fearless, ready to face death, but never ready to be enslaved. Without this lion-like spirit, without this fierce rebelliousness against all traditions and orthodoxies, you can never become a truly spiritual being. But even the lion is not the ultimate peak. The lion can destroy the old, but it cannot create the new. The lion can say a sacred no to duty, but it cannot say a sacred yes to life. For that, the lion must go through another metamorphosis. It must become a child. The child is innocence and forgetfulness. It is a new beginning, a playfulness, a first motion, a sacred yes. The child is not obedient out of fear, nor is it disobedient out of reaction. It knows nothing of the camel. It knows nothing of the lion. Its yes is pure trust, an open invitation to existence to flow through it. The child lives in the moment, without any past to regret, without any future to project. It is a total organic unity. When a child is angry, it becomes the anger itself. Its face becomes radiant. Its body vibrates. It is totally present in its passion. And because it is total, its anger has a beauty of its own. Within moments, the anger passes, the cloud disappears, and the child is back to its innocent laughter, without leaving any trace of resentment behind. But you cannot be total in your anger, and you cannot be total in your love. You are always partial, always fragmentary, always withholding something. When you are angry, your mind is calculating the consequences. When you are making love, your head is thinking about something else. You are never here and now. You are always somewhere else. This fragmentation is your misery. This off-center existence is your hell. My work here with you is to help you become the new man. The new man is nothing but the child reborn, but with a great difference. The first childhood was an innocence of ignorance. It was bound to be lost. You were born innocent, but you had to eat the fruit of knowledge. You had to be expelled from the Garden of Eden, because that is part of natural growth. You had to become a camel. You had to pass through the conditioning of society so that you could gather the strength to become a lion, to revolt against it. And once you have revolted, once you have known the freedom of the lion, you can drop the heavy armor of the warrior and become a child again. This second childhood is an innocence of wisdom. It is a conscious return to your original source, a return to your natural being. The new man does not live according to any laws forced upon him from the outside. His morality is not a social mannerism. It is simply the shadow of his own consciousness. He doesn't need the 10 Commandments because his awareness is enough to guide him. He cannot do anything bad because it is impossible for an enlightened consciousness to create harm. He doesn't belong to any crowd, any nation, any organized religion. He is an individual, unique, irreplaceable. His religion is not an organization. It is a state of meditation, a living silence in which he experiences the essential core of his being, which is eternal, which is immortal. To move toward this new consciousness, you must first create a deep friendship with your body. Do not look at your body as an enemy, as a barrier between you and God. Your body is the most magnificent mechanism in existence. It is the very temple of your soul. Look at the immense intelligence of your body. It breathes for you while you are fast asleep. It digests your food, distributes the vitamins to the brain, repairs your wounds, fights against millions of diseases from the outside without making any noise, without your mind even being aware of it. If the functions of a single human body had to be performed by machines, you would need a giant factory covering miles of land. Yet this beautiful body performs everything silently in such a small space. To condemn this body, to torture it through fasts and austerities in the name of spirituality, is a supreme act of stupidity. It is a crime against existence itself. Tantra accepts only two realities in you, your body and your being. In fact, they are not two separate things. They are two sides of the same coin. Your body is the outer form of your being, and your being is the inner spirit of your body. Between these two lies the mind, the ego, the false personality. The mind is a servant, an instrument created to function in the objective world. But because you are fast asleep, the servant has become the master. You are being ruled by your mind, by your prejudices, by your borrowed knowledge, and your real being has been completely forgotten. You live on the periphery, on the circumference, and you think that this is all there is to life. If you want to find your center, if you want to touch your roots in the divine, You must learn the art of being here and now. All the techniques of meditation are simply devices to put your mind aside, to stop its continuous journey into the past or into the future, and to bring you face to face with the present moment. Because the truth is always in the present. You cannot seek it in the future. You cannot look for it in the past. You are already that which you are searching for. The treasure is hidden inside your house, right under your feet, but you have your eyes fixed on the distant stars, begging for alms from the priests and the politicians. Stop seeking and you will find. Stop running and you will arrive. Just be silent, alert, and fully present in this very moment. Let your mind dissolve into the now, and suddenly you will see a light dawning within you. You will hear a music that has no sound. You will experience a peace that passes all understanding. You will realize that you have never been born, and you can never die. That death is just an illusion of the ego. Your prayers will no longer be a cowardly deal with death. They will become a silent, ecstatic dance of gratitude to this beautiful, infinite universe. This fear of your inner emptiness, of your deep nothingness, is the very thing that drives you into the marketplace, into the crowd, into the false security of your relationships. You are terrified of being alone with yourself because when you sit in silence, when you close your eyes and the noises of the outside world begin to fade away, you suddenly come face to face with a vast, bottomless vacuum. It feels like an abyss, and you feel as if you are going to fall into it and disappear forever. To avoid this encounter, to escape this deep inner shunya, you weave a complex web of activities, of ambitions, of friendships, and of romantic illusions around yourself. You create a false personality, an artificial facade, and you try desperately to believe that this facade is who you are. You look into the eyes of others to find a reflection of yourself, begging for their attention, their validation, and their approval, because you do not have the courage to stand alone in your own naked reality. Your entire life becomes a flight from yourself, a continuous, anxious movement away from your own center. Look at what you call your love life. It is not an expression of joy. It is not a sharing of your abundance. It is simply a desperate attempt by two beggars to exploit each other in order to escape their own inner loneliness. You feel empty, and you expect the other person to fill your emptiness. The other person feels equally empty, and they expect you to fill theirs. Two vacuums cannot fill each other. They can only multiply their emptiness. They can only double their misery. When the initial enchantment wears off, when the honeymoon is over and you realize that the other person has not transformed your inner world, that they have not saved you from your loneliness. Frustration sets in. Your love turns into a battlefield, a subtle and sophisticated Cold War. You begin to control the other person. You try to dominate them. You try to possess them, because possessiveness is nothing but a defense mechanism born out of fear. You are terrified that if the other person leaves, you will be thrown back into your own dark vacuum once again. So you create chains for the other person, and in creating those chains, you unknowingly imprison yourself. This is the horizontal dimension of life, the dimension of time, of calculation, of politics. In this dimension, everything is a transaction, everything is a business deal. Even your most intimate moments are corrupted by this calculating mind. You live with a constant eye on the future, planning how to preserve your security, how to maximize your profit, how to protect your fragile ego from any possible wound. You can never be spontaneous. You can never be real. You are always acting, always playing a role assigned to you by your culture, by your tradition, by your society. If you are a husband, you act like a husband. If you are a wife, you act like a wife. You have a prefabricated script that you follow mechanically, day after day, year after year. Your life becomes an artificial, theatrical performance, and you are so identified with the role that you have completely forgotten your original face. You have become a robot, highly efficient, highly respectable, but dead. To break out of this mechanical pattern, to dissolve this false identity, you must understand the vertical dimension of existence. The vertical dimension has nothing to do with time. It belongs to eternity. It is the dimension of the here and now, the absolute present. In this space, there is no future to project, no past to regret. There is only this very moment, expanding into infinity. Love, real love, can only happen in this vertical dimension. It cannot exist in time because time needs calculation, and love is inherently non-calculative. Love is a total, unreserved surrender to the present moment. When you are truly in love with someone, your mind ceases to function. The old memories, the future anxieties, the social status, the bank accounts all disappear. You are just a flowing energy, a pure presence. The lover and the beloved are no longer two separate entities standing on opposite banks of a river. They have dissolved into the current itself. There is only loving, a soundless music vibrating through existence. But your traditional education and your religious conditionings have made you terrified of this total dissolution. You are afraid to lose control, because losing control means losing the ego. The ego can only thrive when you are separate, when you are fighting, when you are defending your boundaries. In total love, boundaries melt away. You become vulnerable, completely open, and the ego feels that this is like a death. And it is a death, the death of the false, so that the real can be born. Because you are afraid of this inner death, you avoid true intimacy. You keep a safe distance from the person you say you love. You allow them to touch your body, but you do not allow them to touch your soul. You keep your inner doors closed, locked with the keys of suspicion and jealousy. You turn your relationship into a routine, a comfortable arrangement, a legal marriage. Because marriage is a social code designed to eliminate the risk and the spontaneity of love. It gives you a legal guarantee, a permanent ownership over the other person, so that you can relax in your deadness without ever having to face the challenge of an alive, changing relationship. This mechanical approach to life extends directly into your physical intimacy. For the ordinary, unconscious man, the sexual act is nothing more than a local release of built-up physical tension. It is like a good sneeze, a therapeutic manipulation of bioenergy to relieve a biological burden. The energy is thrown out of the body, and you feel a temporary sensation of relief and relaxation. You call this an orgasm, but it is a very superficial, very poor experience. It is a peak experience that climbs to a crescendo of excitement and then immediately drops into a deep valley of exhaustion and depletion. It leaves you feeling pale, tired, and often slightly depressed, because you have lost your vital juice, your life force. You have simply discharged your overflowing petrol because you did not know what else to do with it. This is a local orgasm, confined entirely to the genitals and to a specific center in the brain. It doesn't touch your being. It doesn't transform your consciousness. Tantra speaks of an entirely different dimension of physical union, the valley orgasm. In the ordinary sexual act, the movement is toward more and more excitement, more speed, more friction, leading to a quick, explosive discharge. It is an aggressive, active, goal-oriented process. Tantra says that excitement is just the beginning, a simple turning of the key to open the inner doors, but it must not be the end. Once the energy has been awakened, once the two polarities have come together in a deep, loving embrace, all movement must stop. The couple must enter into absolute stillness, a total passivity, no friction, no effort, no rush to reach anywhere. There is no goal to achieve, no peak to climb. You just remain fully present in each other's energy field, letting the negative and positive currents merge and balance naturally. This is a non-ejaculatory meditative union. The energy is not thrown out of the body. It is conserved, it is circulated, it is absorbed by your entire being. The sexuality ceases to be local. it becomes general, encompassing every single cell, every fiber of your body and your soul. You are no longer two excited individuals trying to unload a physical burden onto each other. You are two relaxed presences melting into an ocean of cosmic energy. This union can be prolonged for hours because there is no tension, no rush. It is a deep, vertical dive into the silent valley of total relaxation. When you come out of such an experience, you do not feel depleted or exhausted. On the contrary, you feel immensely revitalized, radiant, full of life juice and vitality. Your eyes carry a new light, your face carries a new grace, and a subtle, unshakable contentment surrounds you for days. This is the transformation of sex into samadhi. But the commercial mind, the calculating mind, can never understand this. The business-oriented mind is always looking for profit, always asking, what am I going to gain from this? If I spend an hour in stillness, what will be the return on my investment? It wants to purchase meditation. It wants to negotiate with enlightenment. I am reminded of a wealthy businessman who lived in India during the time of Mahavira. This man was unimaginably rich. He had accumulated so much wealth that even kings borrowed money from him. He could buy anything in the material world, and his ego was bloated with the pride of his purchasing power. One day, he heard that the whole town was talking about meditation, that Mahavira was inspiring thousands of people to enter into a state of deep inner peace. The businessman became curious, and his greed was aroused. He thought, if everyone is talking about this thing called meditation, it must be something highly valuable. I must have it. I must buy the best meditation available in the market. He went to Mahavira's hermitage, riding in his golden chariot, surrounded by his bodyguards. He walked up to Mahavira, who was sitting silently under a tree, naked, radiant, perfectly at peace. The businessman looked at him and said, I have heard a lot about your meditation. It has created a fever in this town. Tell me, what is this meditation? How much does it cost? I am ready to pay any price you ask. Name the amount, and my servants will deliver it immediately. Money is not a problem for me. Mahavira looked at the man, and he felt a deep compassion for his ignorance. The businessman thought that meditation was a commodity, a piece of property that could be bought and sold in the marketplace. Mahavira hesitated for a moment, wondering how to convey the unquantifiable reality of being to a mind that only understood arithmetic. Then he decided to play a trick on the businessman. He said, I do not sell meditation. It is not for sale here. But there is a very poor man who lives in your neighborhood, in a small hut at the edge of the town. He has attained a deep state of meditation, and he is so poor, his children are starving, that he might be willing to sell it to you. Go to him and negotiate a price. The businessman was overjoyed. He thought, if the man is poor, it will be very easy to buy it from him. He will sell it for a few silver coins. He rushed to the poor man's hut, knocked loudly on the flimsy wooden door, and shouted, "Listen, old man, I have been sent here by Mahavira. I know you have something called meditation. Name your price. I am ready to give you a bag of gold coins, enough to buy a big house and feed your family for generations. Just give me your meditation right now." The poor man looked at the wealthy businessman, and he began to laugh. He said, "You are an idiot. You can buy my hut, you can buy my clothes, you can buy my body, you can even buy my life if you give me enough gold. But how can I sell you my meditation? It is not an object that I can take out of my pocket and hand over to you. It is the very quality of my being. It is my inner silence, my awareness, my soul. When I sit in stillness, I am the meditation. How can I separate myself from my own existence and sell it to you for gold?" The businessman left completely confused, unable to comprehend what had happened. His calculating mind could not grasp a reality that had no financial value, a treasure that could not be measured by the standards of the marketplace. This is the situation of the ordinary human mind. You are always approaching life as a businessman, trying to bargain, trying to give less and take more. But in the realm of inner growth, this commercial approach is an absolute barrier. You cannot buy meditation. You cannot negotiate with truth. You have to be a player, a warrior, ready to risk everything you have, ready to put your entire life at stake for the unknown, without any calculation of profit or loss. Look at a small child. A child is born a natural warrior, a natural player. It doesn't have a business mind. It doesn't think in terms of utility or profit. Watch a child playing with ordinary colored stones on the beach, or running after a butterfly in the garden. It is totally absorbed in the act. If you ask the child, "Why are you running after the butterfly? What will you gain from it? What is the purpose of collecting these stones?" the child will look at you as if you are a fool. It cannot understand your language of purpose, because for a child, the act itself is the joy, the act itself is the celebration. It breathes deeply, with its abdomen, its navel going up and down naturally. It is perfectly centered in its own being, rooted in the present moment, overflowing with vital energy and innocence. But civilization cannot tolerate this spontaneous innocence. The society is terrified of a child who is perfectly at ease with itself, because an independent, content individual can never be reduced to a slave. So the machinery of conditioning begins to work immediately. Parents, teachers, priests, all descend upon the child's innocence like a pack of wolves. They begin to force definitions, disciplines, and moral codes into its pure mind. They tell the child, "Do not waste your time in purposeless play. Everything you do must have a purpose, a goal. You must study hard to become successful, to become respectable, to become a doctor, an engineer, a politician." The child is forced to leave its natural center, its navel, and move into the head. It is taught to suppress its vital instincts, its natural anger, its spontaneous laughter, its innocent sexuality. It is told that its animality is dirty, that its nature is full of sin. To control the child's vital energy, the society forces its breathing to become shallow. It must not breathe from the abdomen because deep breathing massages the sex center, making it active and alive. Deep breathing connects the child with its biological roots, with its raw, wild power. The society wants a castrated man, a weak man, a predictable robot. So the child learns to breathe only from the chest, keeping a safe distance from its own center. It develops a false personality, a polite mask, and it spends its entire life pretending to be what it is not. This shallow, mechanical existence is what you call normalcy. You are a highly cultured, deeply repressed, completely artificial entity. You go on living according to the rules written by dead people thousands of years ago. You use your ideals of non-violence, of love, of compassion, not as real expressions of your being, but as sophisticated shields to hide your inner ugliness, your hidden violence, your unlived passions. You are violent inside, but you wear a beautiful mask of non-violence. You are full of lust inside, but you wear a false face of celibacy. This internal division, this continuous conflict between your real nature and your artificial ideal, creates a permanent state of anxiety and tension within you. You are completely exhausted by this inner war, and yet you go on maintaining the hypocrisy because you are terrified of what the crowd will say if you drop your mask. Tantra says, the first step toward your ultimate freedom is to drop all your ideals, all your future goals, and to accept yourself totally, exactly as you are in this very moment. This is the most difficult thing for the conditioned mind to do because your entire ego is built upon your false self-image, upon your ideals. If you accept that you are angry, that you are full of lust, that you are greedy, your beautiful image falls down immediately. You feel exposed, naked, like an animal. But I tell you, you are an animal, and there is nothing wrong with being an animal. The animal is innocent. It is natural. It is part of this beautiful existence. Do not deny your animality. Accept it gratefully. It is the very soil out of which the golden lotus of your consciousness will grow. If you deny the soil, if you call the mud dirty and try to escape from it, you can never grow into a lotus flower. The fragrance of the lotus comes from the transformation of that very mud. The rosiness of its petals comes from the life juice of that very earth. Your anger, your sex, your greed are your raw cosmic energies. They are your hidden treasures. You do not need to destroy them. You do not need to fight with them. You simply need to bring a deep, intense awareness to them. You need to move to their very roots, to know them completely, to experience them in their total facticity. When anger arises in you, traditional religions tell you to suppress it, to count to 10, to pray to God, to drink a glass of water, to distract your mind somewhere else. They tell you to force a fake smile on your face and pretend that you are peaceful. This is absolute poison. The anger is not destroyed by your glass of water. It is simply pushed down into your unconscious mind, where it remains like a hidden wound, circulating its venom through your entire physiology. It will come out later as an illness, as a cold war, as a passive-aggressive perversion. Tantra says, when anger arises, go into your room, close the doors, and let yourself be angry totally. Do not suppress it. Do not hold back a single bit of its energy. Let your whole body shake with the fire of anger. Let every cell become a burning flame. Do not direct your anger against anyone else, because the other is irrelevant. The anger is your energy. It belongs to you. Become the anger itself. Do not stand aside as a spectator. Jump into the volcano completely. Let the fire burn your false personality. Let it consume all your politeness and your social masks. Become a total, living flare of passion. And in that peak moment of total presentness, when you have become the anger itself, when there is no longer any division between you and the emotion, suddenly bring a flash of awareness into the center. Do not judge. Do not evaluate. Do not say, this is bad, this is a sin. Simply observe the phenomenon from within. Look at the intense vibration of your cells. Feel the boiling of your blood. Witness the magnificent dance of your life force in its wild, uncultivated form, and you will be amazed by a great miracle. If you can remain a silent witness in the very peak of your total passion, without any judgment, without any suppression, suddenly the anger disappears. It evaporates like smoke from a dying fire, and it leaves behind a deep, profound silence. A silence that is not the dead silence of a graveyard, but the alive, vibrant silence of a beautiful garden after a great storm. You will feel completely refreshed, unburdened, reborn. Your energy will have been transformed into a higher spiritual light. This is the alchemical secret of Tantra. It applies to your sex. It applies to your greed. It applies to your fear. It applies to every single emotion within you. You can only transcend that which you have known fully, that which you have experienced in its absolute totality. If you suppress something, you can never go beyond it. It will follow you like a dark shadow for lives together. Therefore, do not be a businessman with your inner world. Do not be a coward who is always playing safe, clinging to the artificial order created by the priests and the politicians. Be a warrior, be a player, ready to risk your false personality for the sake of your true, original face. Accept your natural suchness, your tathata, without any conditions. Let go of all your definitions of good and bad, of pure and impure. Let your divisions melt away into a single unified consciousness. Live each moment with total authenticity, with intense presentness, and you will see that this very world transforms into paradise, that your very body becomes a temple of the divine. The techniques we are going to explore are simple devices to help you put your mind aside, to dissolve your false self-image, and to throw you back into your own natural center. They are atomic methods, small in form but explosive in their results. They do not require any belief, any holy scripture, any temple or any ritual. You are quite enough of a temple yourself. Your own body is the laboratory where the experiment is to be performed. You only need a deep willingness to experiment, a sincere alertness, a courageous curiosity to know who you are. This total immersion into the reality of your inner nature is the only true surgery that can free you from the invisible chains of your past. When you become a silent witness to your own internal patterns, you are no longer fueling the mechanism of the mind. You must understand that your ordinary consciousness is not a single, solid entity. It is a constantly shifting crowd of multiple egos, a chaotic wheel of false masters. In the evening, one part of your mind decides that you will wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning to practice meditation. You feel determined, you feel certain of your resolve, But when the alarm rings in the cold darkness of the morning, a completely different part of your mind takes over the mechanism. It says to you that the morning is too beautiful, that the bed is too cozy, that you can always meditate tomorrow. You pull the blanket over your face and go back to sleep. When you finally wake up at 9 o'clock, you feel guilty and you wonder how you could have broken your own resolution. You do not see the simple reality that the person who made the resolution in the evening is not the same person who broke it in the morning. You are a house filled with lazy, rebellious servants, and each servant pretends to be the absolute owner of the palace whenever he comes to the gate. This internal chaos exists because you are completely disconnected from your original center. Your breathing has become shallow, confined entirely to the upper part of your chest. You do not breathe from the abdomen. You do not let the life juice touch your navel, because the society has made you terrified of your own biological roots. From your very childhood, you have been taught to create a distance between your upper body and your lower body. The lower body has been condemned as dirty, as animalistic, as the source of sin. When a child naturally touches his own body, the parents scream and tell him to stop. In that very moment of fear, the child's breathing becomes shallow. He pulls his energy upward, away from the navel, away from the sex center, because to let the breath move deeply down means to massage the centers of biological vitality. The society wants you to be a civilized, castrated entity, completely manageable and predictable. So you live exclusively in your head, weaving empty thoughts, creating complex intellectual philosophies, while your real roots remain starved of cosmic energy. Tantra looks at this whole situation with absolute clarity and scientific pragmatism. It tells you that there are two paths to reach the ultimate reality: the path of yoga and the path of Tantra. They reach the same goal, but their methods are diametrically opposite. Yoga is the path of the warrior, a fierce internal struggle against your own natural instincts. Yoga says that you must fight your desires, you must suppress your passions, you must crystallize a new center of being through absolute control. It is a path of deep, conscious suicide, where the natural self must die completely so that the divine self can be born. Because this language of struggle and conflict appeals to your ego, yoga has always had a huge mass appeal. You know how your desires have enslaved you. You know how your passions have made you suffer. So when someone tells you to fight them, your mind immediately understands the language. But Tantra is a completely different dimension. It is the path of passivity, of total, unconditional affirmation. Tantra tells you not to fight with yourself, because any fight with yourself is a supreme act of foolishness. You are the one who is fighting, and you are the one who is being fought. How can you win? You will only exhaust your vital energy. You will only create a deep, permanent tension within your soul. Tantra tells you to accept whatsoever you are with immense gratitude. Anger, sex, greed, all these energies are divine gifts. They look ugly to you only because you do not know the art of using them. They are like raw materials, hidden sources of power that can be transformed into a higher spiritual reality. When you move into your desires with full consciousness, with total awareness, you transcend them naturally. You pass through them like an outsider, untouched, uncorrupted. Look at a child sleeping. Observe the absolute beauty and harmony of its breathing. The chest remains completely still, while its abdomen moves up and down naturally with every single breath. The child is perfectly centered in its navel, in its hara. It lives in its being, not in its head. That is why a child is so intensely alive, so full of uncaused joy, so overflowing with energy. When a child gets angry, it doesn't calculate the consequences. It becomes the anger itself, a pure blazing fire of passion. And because it is total, its anger is beautiful. Within moments, the storm passes, the cloud evaporates, and the child is back to its natural, innocent laughter. It carries no memory of the past, no resentment for the tomorrow. It is an organic unity. But as you grow up, your mind becomes stuffed with borrowed knowledge, with social moralities, with theological dogmas. You are taught that you must become someone else, that you must imitate a Buddha, a Christ, or a Krishna. You are never allowed to be yourself. This constant effort to become someone else creates a deep, painful split within your being. You develop a false, polite self-image, and you spend your entire life trying to protect it. When you get angry, you force a fake smile on your face because your morality tells you that anger is bad. You repress the fire, you push it down into your unconscious mind, and you pretend to be a saint. But that repressed anger doesn't disappear. It remains inside you like a hidden poison, mutating into a cold, passive-aggressive perversion. You become a hypocrite, a false actor playing a role in a script written by dead people. Tantra tells you to throw away all your scripts, all your models, all your unnatural ideals. It tells you to accept your animality, to accept your raw, primitive nature. The word purity has a totally different meaning in the science of Tantra. For traditional religions, purity means goodness, the elimination of the bad and the accumulation of the good. But for Tantra, This division into good and bad is the ultimate impurity. To divide existence is to live in an illusion. Purity means innocence, an undifferentiated wholeness, where there is no judgment, no choice, no selection. A sage who has reached the ultimate peak of tantric awareness becomes exactly like a small child again, but with a magnificent difference. The child's innocence was born out of ignorance. It was bound to be lost. The sage's innocence is born out of absolute wisdom. It can never be destroyed. He has passed through all the dualities of life. He has seen the darkness and the light, and he has realized that they are both degrees of the same cosmic energy. When you sit in silence and focus your attention on your breathing, you are touching the nearest bridge between your body and your spirit. Breathing is a continuous flow, a constant circle of life and death happening within you every single second. The incoming breath is a rebirth. The outgoing breath is a death. Between these two parallel movements, there are hidden entry points into the ultimate reality. One technique tells you to focus your total attention at the precise moment when the breath has come in completely down to the navel and has not yet turned to go out. In that minute, microscopic interval, there is no breathing. For 1,000th part of a second, the mechanism stops. You are neither breathing in nor breathing out. In that universal pause, you are disconnected from the world of time and space. If you can become aware of this gap, your small, false self vanishes immediately, and you realize your eternal being. Another method tells you to focus your attention on the turning point itself, where the incoming breath curves to become the outgoing breath. It is exactly like changing the gear in a motor vehicle. Each time you shift from the first gear to the second, you must pass through the neutral gear, which is not a gear at all. In that neutral territory, the body of the vehicle is temporarily disconnected from the moving mechanism. Your body is a giant, highly complex machine running on many different gears. Your waking consciousness uses one gear. Your dreaming state uses another gear. Your deep sleep uses yet another. When your breath takes a turn inside your abdomen, it passes through the absolute neutral gear of your existence. In that turning point, you are neither physical nor mental, neither a body nor a mind. You simply are a pure, simple, unembodied presence. If you can keep your awareness sharp enough to catch this turning point, you realize the self immediately. To train your mind in this intense, minute alertness, Tantra provides you with the secret science of the third eye. Between your two eyebrows, there is a mysterious, non-functioning point known as the pineal gland, the eye of Shiva. It is naturally closed, but it can be opened through the focused power of your attention. This gland has a strange magnetic quality. It absorbs your inner attention like a sponge. If you close your eyes and let both of your pupils move toward the middle of your eyebrows, you will suddenly feel a physical pull. Your eyes will become fixed, hypnotized by the magnetic force of the third eye itself. Once your attention is centered at this point, a great revolution happens in your inner world. For the first time in your life, you become a detached witness to your own thoughts. Ordinarily, you are completely identified with your mind. If a thought of anger moves through your head, you do not see it as an object. You become the anger itself. You take its form. You vibrate with its passion. You are completely lost in it. But from the vantage point of the third eye, you are sitting at a high window, watching the street below. Thoughts, desires, memories, emotions, all run before you like clouds moving across a vast sky. You see them, you encounter them, but you are not touched by them. A cloud of anger comes around you, but you remain separate, cool, centered in your own being. The anger becomes completely impotent because it can only live through your identification. Once you are a witness, the fire loses its fuel and you are free. Furthermore, when you are centered at the third eye, your imagination gains an incredible cosmic power. In this space, imagination and actualization are no longer two different things. There is no gap between a dream and a reality. Whatsoever you imagine with total attention at the third eye becomes immediately actualized. If you imagine that your whole head is being filled with the subtle essence of prana, the invisible life force that moves through the vehicle of air, it will be filled instantly. And if you imagine that this prana is showering down from the top of your head, from the highest psychic center, as a brilliant, radiant light, the shower will actually happen. You will feel a literal downpour of cosmic energy refreshing your entire physiology, washing away all the dust of your ancient conditionings, giving you a completely new birth. But this power carries a tremendous responsibility, which is why Tantra insists so deeply on innocence and purity before you enter these advanced practices. If your mind is filled with hidden violence, with repressed malice, with perverted desires, being focused at the third eye can become dangerous to you and to others. If you think of suicide while centered at this point, the thought will manifest immediately as reality without giving you any time to change your mind. Your ordinary imagination is fortunately impotent because you are fast asleep on the periphery. Your thoughts cannot affect reality directly because there is a vast distance between your mind and the source of power. But as you move closer to the center, the distance disappears. You must learn to practice this awareness not only in isolation, not only when you are sitting with closed eyes in a quiet room, but when you are fully engaged in your worldly activities. This is one of the most beautiful methods mentioned by Shiva. He tells you that while you are eating, while you are walking, while you are talking, while you are doing your ordinary business in the marketplace, you must keep your sub-attention continuously fixed on the gap between your breaths. Let your activity continue on the circumference. Let your body play its role in the social drama of life. But let your consciousness remain anchored at the center. What will happen if you practice this continuously for a few weeks? Your entire life will transform into a great psychodrama. You will become an actor playing different parts on a vast stage without ever becoming serious about any of them. Seriousness always arises from identification. If you are playing a role in a theater and you truly believe that you are the character, then if your stage wife is stolen, you will have a real heart attack. You will burst into genuine tears, and the play will have to be stopped. But if you know that you are just an actor, you repeat the lines, you make the gestures, you express the sorrow beautifully for the audience, but deep down you remain completely unaffected. You know who you are. You know that when the curtain falls, you will go back to your home and sleep peacefully, without a single thought of the stage wife entering your dreams. Modern man is in a deep, agonizing crisis because he has mistaken his social role for his reality. You think you are a doctor, a politician, a lawyer, a clerk. You are not. These are just functional roles given to you by the utility-oriented society. You have become so identified with your mask that you cannot take it off even when you sleep. You go to your bed wearing your professional status, carrying your bank balances, dragging your competitive anxieties along with you. Your life has lost all its juice, all its poetry, all its spontaneity. You are just a sophisticated, highly efficient robot running on the mechanical programs of the dead past. If you can keep your attention fixed on the inner gap while moving through your daily business, a great unburdening happens. You see yourself talking, you see yourself buying, you see yourself getting irritated, but you see it as if it is happening to someone else. You become a watcher on the hill. The world remains the same, your work remains the same, but your relationship with it changes radically. You are in the world, but you are no longer of it. You have broken the collective hypnosis of humanity, and you are born anew. This masterly direction over your inner world can even be extended to your dreaming state and to death itself. Tantra provides a very specific technique to be practiced at the precise moment when you are falling asleep. As you lie down on your bed, let your body relax completely. Sleep is overtaking you by and by. Your conscious mind is beginning to dissolve. Just before you slip into unconsciousness, focus your attention on the invisible, intangible prana entering your heart with every single breath. Feel your heart being filled with this cosmic vitality, being touched by this silent current of light. Let this feeling be the last active thought in your mind as sleep drowns you. If you can manage to fall asleep with this continuous awareness at the heart, a miracle happens in your dreams. Suddenly, in the middle of a dream, you become aware that you are dreaming. Ordinarily, when you are dreaming, you take the dream as absolute reality. If a tiger is chasing you in a dream, you tremble with real fear, your heart beats fast, your adrenaline flows, and you run as fast as you can. You cannot realize in the dream that it is just a projection of your mind. You only realize it in the morning when you open your eyes and see that there is no tiger, that you are safe in your bed. But with this technique, you are awake inside the sleep. The dream continues on the screen of your mind, but you are sitting in the theater, looking at it, knowing fully well that it is just a play of light and shadow. The moment you know that a dream is a dream, it loses all its power over you. It can no longer frighten you. It can no longer entice you. And the moment you become the master of your dreams, dreaming stops completely. Your mind becomes absolutely silent, vacant, pure space. This state of dreamless sleep is qualitatively identical to death. Death is nothing but a long, deep, dreamless sleep. When a man has lived his life for 70 or 80 years, his physical body becomes completely exhausted, tired of the continuous friction of life. Short durations of nightly sleep are no longer enough to rejuvenate it. It needs a great sleep, a radical rest, so that it can dissolve its old form and start anew with a fresh container. Because you are completely unconscious in your nightly sleep, you are bound to be completely unconscious in your death also. Fear takes over, anxiety grips your ego, and you fall into a deep coma at the moment of death. This coma is a natural protective mechanism, but it wipes your memory clean. You forget who you were, you forget your past lives, and you are born again into a new body as an absolute stranger to repeat the same mechanical routine all over again. But if you can remain aware in your dreamless sleep, If you can direct your inner consciousness through the gates of the heart, you will remain perfectly conscious at the moment of death. You will see your body becoming cold, you will see your heartbeat stopping, you will see your breathing disappearing, but you will see it as a silent witness. You will know that the house is falling apart, but the master is untouched. You will experience death not as a calamity, not as a destruction, but as a beautiful, necessary, deeply relaxing rest. You will pass through the great sleep with full awareness. And because you are aware, you gain absolute power over your next birth. You can choose your parents. You can choose the time, the place, the form of your next incarnation. You are no longer a passive victim of blind biological forces. You are a conscious creator of your own destiny. This supreme mastery is already your potential. It is hidden within you, waiting for your attention to awaken it. All that is needed is a total shift in your perspective. Stop looking at yourself through the eyes of the crowd. Stop trying to fulfill the expectations of your priests and your politicians. Have the courage to stand alone in your own nakedness, to love yourself unconditionally, to accept your tathata, your unique reality. Let your life become a playful, non-serious, passionate dance of being. Forget the horizontal line of time and calculation and take a vertical dive into the eternal now. You can try these methods in any ordinary situation of life. If you are sitting on a seat or lying on a bed, close your eyes and let yourself become completely weightless. Weight belongs to the body. It is a material phenomenon connected to the earth's gravitation. But your consciousness has no weight. It is immaterial, infinite, cosmic. If you continuously suggest to yourself that you are weightless, if you feel the weightlessness penetrating your muscles, your bones, your nerves, a moment comes when suddenly the body disappears from your awareness. You are just a vacant space floating in eternity. In that weightlessness, you transcend the mind completely, and you enter the kingdom of God. Do not allow your mind to argue about these formulas. Do not let it tell you that they are too simple or too difficult. These are atomic secrets of inner transformation. They look simple because their formulation is condensed, but their practice will require your total energy, your utmost devotion, your absolute sincerity. Do not talk about them. Do not turn them into another intellectual philosophy to be discussed in social clubs. Be silent and do the exercise. Play with them for a few days and see which method clicks with your inner mechanism. The moment a technique fits your personality, something explodes within you, and your life is never the same again. You step out of the herd of blind believers. You leave the marketplace of cowardly calculations, and you enter the magnificent, everlasting life of an awakened being. This subtle hesitation of your mind, this constant skepticism toward everything that is simple and natural, is the ultimate deception of your ego. The mind is a highly sophisticated mechanism of evasion, always seeking complex problems, arduous journeys, and impossible goals, because only through a struggle can the ego maintain its false sense of reality. If I give you a simple technique, a method that requires no effort, no money, no theological knowledge, your mind immediately rejects it as a primitive illusion. It cannot believe that something as monumental as enlightenment, as profound as finding your inner center, can happen through a simple adjustment of your awareness. The ego wants a heroic battle. It wants to climb the highest peak of austerities. It wants to torture the body. It wants to follow difficult disciplines, because when you succeed in a difficult task, your ego is magnified. Your holiness becomes a new commodity in the marketplace of respectability. You can stand before the crowd and say, "Look how much I have suffered. Look how virtuous I have become." But this holiness is nothing but your ego standing on its head. It is the same old pride, only disguised in the beautiful clothes of religious piety. Look at the history of human search. Whenever a true master gives a direct, simple formula to humanity, the scholars and the dogmatic theologians immediately distort it into a complex system of rules and rituals, because they are terrified of simplicity. Simplicity kills the mind. Simplicity destroys the ego. If you are simple, you are a child, and a child cannot be manipulated by the priests and the politicians. I am reminded of Pythagoras, one of the greatest intellectual giants the Western world has ever produced. He was a mathematician, a rationalist, a man of supreme intellect. He traveled all the way from Greece to Egypt in search of the ancient mystery schools, because he wanted to acquire the secret knowledge of the mystics. He reached the gates of an esoteric school, but to his absolute shock, the masters refused him entrance. His pride was deeply wounded. He was a celebrated thinker, a man of immense fame, and these mysterious masters were telling him that he was not fit to enter their temple. They told him that he must first go through a 40-day fast, sitting in absolute isolation, breathing with intense awareness on certain subtle points of his body, before his application could even be considered. Pythagoras argued with them. He said that he had come for knowledge, for intellectual principles, for philosophy, not for any kind of physical discipline or ascetic torture. But the masters laughed and told him that knowledge without experience is just a dead weight, a collection of words that breathes no life. They told him that his head was too heavy, that he was completely off balance, and that unless his center shifted from the head to the heart, he would remain blind to the mysteries of existence. He had no other choice, so he had to submit to their training. For 40 days, he sat in absolute silence, fasting, watching his breath, moving deep into his own biological currents. And when he completed the training, he was allowed to enter the school. He wept with joy and declared to the masters that they were right and he was wrong. Because the man who entered the room was not the same man who had reached their gates 40 days before. He was reborn. His intellectual arrogance had dissolved, his calculations had ceased, and for the first time in his life, truth was no longer a philosophical concept to be argued about, but a living, vibrant reality to be experienced. The technique that was given to Pythagoras in Egypt is the fifth technique of Shiva. It is an atomic method of shifting your consciousness from the periphery to the center. Shiva says, focus your attention between the eyebrows. Let the mind be before thought. Let your form fill with the breath essence to the top of the head, and there let it shower as a brilliant light. Modern scientific research has finally discovered that exactly between your two eyebrows lies a mysterious gland called the pineal gland. In the ancient tantric scriptures, this is known as the third eye, the eye of Shiva. It is a physical reality, but it remains non-functioning in the ordinary human being. It is closed, and you have to provide the right food to open it. And what is the food of the third eye? Attention. Attention is its food. For lives and lives, your third eye has been starved because your attention has been directed exclusively toward the outside world, toward objects, toward money, toward power, toward the periphery. If you close your eyes and let both of your pupils move toward the exact center between your eyebrows, you will feel a sudden physical pull. This point is highly magnetic for attention. If you bring your awareness near it, the gland itself begins to suck your attention like a sponge. Your eyes become fixed, hypnotized by the inner force of the third eye. They cannot move, they cannot wander. And the moment your attention is captured by this center, a great miracle happens. For the first time in your life, you become a detached witness to your own mind. Ordinarily, you are completely identified with your thoughts. If a wave of anger passes through your head, you do not see it as a separate object. You become the anger itself. You vibrate with its fire. You take its form. You act according to its compulsion. There is no gap between you and the emotion. But the moment you are centered in the third eye, you are suddenly elevated to a high mountain peak, looking down at the valley below. Thoughts, desires, memories, passions, all run before you like clouds moving across a vast sky or people walking on a crowded street. You are an observer, a watcher on the hill. A cloud of anger comes around you, but you look at it and you know that you are not the anger. You are the seer, the witness, completely untouched and uncorrupted by the storm. And the moment the anger loses your identification, it becomes impotent. It cannot move you. It cannot force you into any reactive pattern. It simply passes away, leaving your inner mirror completely clean. When you are focused at this magnetic center, another dimension opens to your awareness. You become capable of perceiving the very essence of your breathing. While you are breathing, your ordinary mind thinks you are only taking in air, oxygen, hydrogen, and various material gases. Science says you are just breathing air. But Tantra says that air is just the vehicle, the container, not the real content. Through the air, you are breathing prana, the vital elan vital of the cosmos, the non-material life force of existence itself. When you are centered between the eyebrows, you can feel the delicate, subtle vibration of this prana essence entering your body. It is an invisible, immaterial current of absolute life. Shiva says, when you feel this essence of breath entering through the nostrils, let your imagination fill your whole form up to the top of your head, to the Sahasrar, the highest psychic center. And the moment you imagine it, it happens immediately. You must understand that for an ordinary man living on the periphery, imagination is just an impotent dream. You imagine many things, and nothing happens because your mind is completely weak, fragmented, disconnected from the source of power. But the moment your awareness enters the third eye, your imagination becomes an actual fact. There is no gap between a thought and a reality. Whatsoever you imagine is immediately actualized. This is the secret science behind all hypnotism and all deep mental suggestions. When a hypnotist tells you to focus your gaze on a single light or a small dot on the wall, he is unknowingly forcing your attention toward the third eye. Within minutes, your pupils become fixed, and your inner energy begins to flow toward the pineal gland. The hypnotist looks at your face, and he knows exactly when the energy has been sucked inward because your face suddenly loses all its ordinary luster and expression. It looks dead, flat, completely passive, as if you have fallen into a deep coma. In that very moment, your logical mind, your calculating head is switched off. You are in the neutral gear of your mechanism. Now, whatsoever suggestion the hypnotist gives you will be taken by your unconscious mind as an absolute, unshakable reality. If he puts a cold, ordinary stone in your hand and tells you with authority that this is a piece of burning coal, your mind will not argue. It cannot argue because the logical center is non-functioning. It accepts the suggestion completely, and it sends immediate chemical messages to your body. You will not only feel an intense heat, but your skin will actually develop a biological burn, a physical blister. There is no fire, yet the body burns. This is the incredible miraculous power of the third eye. If the hypnotist tells you that you are dead, your heart will stop beating immediately. It will follow the order because, for the third eye, imagination is the reality. Because this center is so immensely potent, Tantra insists on absolute innocence and purity before you enter these advanced states of awareness. Purity for Tantra is not a moralistic concept, it is a practical necessity. If your mind is stuffed with repressed anger, with hidden violence, with perverted passions, being centered at the third eye can become dangerous to you and to others. If a thought of suicide enters your mind while you are focused at this point, the thought will realize itself instantly, without giving you any time to change your mind or to correct your path. You will be destroyed by your own power. Traditional religions have forced you to suppress your natural energies, and because you have suppressed them, your unconscious mind is like a dark volcano filled with poisonous mud. If you open the third eye while carrying this volcanic mud inside you, you will manifest your nightmares into reality. That is why you must first become like a child, innocent, non-judging, accepting your nature completely without any division into good and bad. If you are pure, if your heart is innocent like a child, then focus between the eyebrows and imagine that the prana essence is filling the top of your head, and there let it shower as a brilliant light. Immediately, a literal downpour of divine light will happen inside you. You will feel as if you are sitting under a cool, radiant waterfall of cosmic energy, washing away all your tensions, all your anxieties, all your ancient bondages. Under this shower of light, every single cell of your body will be rejuvenated, refreshed, and completely transformed. This is what it means to be born anew. This is the real baptism, not the artificial ritual performed by the priests in your churches, but the existential baptism of fire and light happening inside your own consciousness. Shiva says that this attentiveness must not be practiced only in isolation, not only when you are sitting in a quiet corner with closed eyes. He says move into your worldly activities, but keep your attention fixed on the gap between your breaths. Whatsoever you are doing, let the activity continue on the circumference, but keep your inner eyes fixed on the center. You are eating your food, go on eating, but be aware of the silent interval between the incoming breath and the outgoing breath. You are walking on the street, let the body walk, let the traffic be there, but remain anchored in the neutral gear of your breathing. You are talking to a friend, let the words flow, but let your consciousness remain immovable in the gap. What will happen if you practice this continuously in your day-to-day life? Your entire existence will turn into a beautiful drama. You will become an actor playing different roles on a vast stage without ever losing yourself in the characters. The ordinary man has become completely identified with his role. You think you are a husband, a father, a businessman, a doctor. You have forgotten that these are just superficial parts given to you by the utility-oriented society. You play the role so seriously that you carry it to your bed, you carry it to your sleep, and your entire life becomes an anxious, tense nightmare. Seriousness always arises from identification. If an actor playing the role of a king in a theater truly believes that he is the king, then if his kingdom is attacked on the stage, he will have a real heart failure. But if he knows that he is just an actor, he fights the battle beautifully. He repeats his dialogue with intense passion, but deep down in his center, he is completely cool, relaxed, detached. He knows that when the curtain falls, he will go back to his ordinary room, eat his dinner, and sleep peacefully, without the stage war entering his dreams. If you can maintain your awareness in the gap between the breaths while moving through your worldly business, you break the collective hypnosis of humanity. You see your body working, you see your mind thinking, you see your false personality playing its games, but you look at it all as a witness, as if it is happening to someone else. You are in the world, but you are no longer of it. You become a free individual, a master of your own movements. From this center of witnessing, you can extend your mastery even to your dreaming state and to death itself. Shiva gives an incredible technique to be practiced at the precise moment when you are falling asleep. Every night, as you lie down on your bed, let your body relax completely. Sleep is overtaking you slowly. Your conscious mind is beginning to dissolve, and within moments, you will slip into unconsciousness. Just before that boundary line is crossed, become intensely aware of the invisible, intangible prana entering your nostrils and feel it reaching directly to your heart center. Let your heart be filled with this silent cosmic vitality, and let this feeling be the very last active awareness in your mind as sleep drowns you. If you can fall asleep with this continuous awareness at the heart, a great revolution happens in your sleep. Suddenly, in the middle of the night, while a dream is running on the screen of your mind, you become aware that you are dreaming. Ordinarily, when you are dreaming, you have no awareness of the self. If a monster is chasing you in a dream, you tremble with real fear, your heart beats fast, and you run as fast as you can because you take the dream as an absolute reality. You only realize it was an illusion in the morning when you wake up. But with this technique, you wake up inside the dream. The dream continues, the images move, but you look at them as a spectator in a theater, knowing fully well that it is just a play of shadows, just a projection of your mind. The moment you know that a dream is a dream, it loses all its power to deceive you. It can no longer create any fear, any greed, any anxiety in you. And when you become the master of your dreams, dreaming stops automatically. Your mind becomes completely silent, vacant, pure space. This state of dreamless, conscious sleep is qualitatively identical to death. Death is nothing but a long, deep, dreamless sleep. Every single day, your body becomes tired of the friction of life, and it drops into sleep to regain its vitality. After a life of 70 or 80 years, the entire mechanism becomes permanently exhausted, and short durations of nightly sleep are no longer enough to repair it. It needs a great sleep, a radical rest, so that it can dissolve its old form and start anew with a fresh container. Because you are completely unconscious in your nightly sleep, you are bound to be completely unconscious at the moment of death also. Fear takes over, anxiety grips your ego, and you fall into a deep coma as your life force leaves the body. This coma is a natural protection, but it wipes your memory clean, and you are born again into another womb as an absolute slave to biological currents. But if you can remain aware in your sleep, if you can direct your consciousness through the gates of the heart, you will remain perfectly conscious at the moment of death. You will witness your body becoming cold. You will witness your heart stopping. You will witness your breathing disappearing. But you will know with absolute certainty that you are the witness, not the dying mechanism. You will pass through death with open eyes, and because you are conscious, you gain absolute direction over your next birth. You can choose where to be born, to whom, in what form, and for what purpose. You become the master of your own destiny. Another incredible method mentioned by Shiva is the technique of objectless awareness through the senses. He says, imagine the 5 colored circles of the peacock tail to be your 5 senses, expanding into illimitable space, and then let their beauty melt within. or focus your gaze on any single point on a wall or a dot in space, and look at it continuously without moving an eyelash, until the point itself dissolves. When you stare at a single point without any movement of your eyes, your mind cannot think. Thoughts need movement. Your mind needs to jump from one object to another to remain alive. If you fix your eyes on a single dot, the mind is paralyzed, the gears are jammed. Within minutes, the point disappears from your awareness, because the point can only exist against the background of a moving mind. And when the object dissolves completely, when there is nothing left to see outside, suddenly the seer is thrown back upon itself. The mirror has nothing left to reflect, so it reflects its own nature. You enter into a state of absolute objectless awareness, a profound void where your innermost wish comes true. Your wish for another comes true because when you are a pure void, you are no longer separate from the universe. You have become the whole. Shiva also gives a physical, deeply primitive technique that reaches to the very roots of your biological survival. He says, suck something and become the sucking. Sucking is the very first act of life. The moment a child is born, its first cry is nothing but an aggressive effort to suck air into its empty lungs. In the mother's womb, the child was living for 9 months without breathing, getting pure prana directly through the mother's blood, without any effort of its own. That is why the womb is the ultimate paradise mentioned in all your myths. There is no worry, no responsibility, no hunger, no cold. Everything is supplied naturally by the cosmos through the mother. The moment the child is born, it is thrown out of paradise into a cold, insecure world. It has to breathe on its own. It has to struggle for its own survival. The first contact the child makes with the external universe is the mother's breast. The breast represents food, warmth, security, and absolute love. It is the most beautiful thing the child encounters. This first experience is printed so deeply in the human unconscious that the entire humanity remains obsessed with breasts throughout life. Your attraction toward the feminine form, your sexual desires, your artistic expressions, and your religious repressions all revolve around this primary memory. If a child is not allowed to suck his mother's breast fully, if he is denied that natural warmth and security out of some civilized superstition or artificial code, he will remain a psychological cripple throughout his life. He will continuously look for substitutes. This technique tells you to suck something. It can be an ordinary object. It can be your own breath. It can be your tongue, but forget the object, forget the sucker, and become the pure process of sucking itself. If you close your eyes, and enter into the act of sucking so deeply that your whole being becomes just a sucking movement, a magnificent phenomenon will happen. You will be immediately regressed back to the pristine innocence of a newborn babe. Your adult personality, your social conditionings, your borrowed knowledge, your professional status, all will drop away instantly. You will become a pure biological process, an innocent current of bioenergy connected directly to the cosmic source. A deep, miraculous silence will wrap around your soul. The mind cannot function because you have bypassed all its sophisticated patterns and returned to the very first channel of life force. If you can stay in this pure process of sucking for a few minutes, you will feel a sudden opening of an inner door. You will come to experience a state of being that is completely desireless, content, at home in the universe. You will realize that you do not need anything from the outside to be happy, that the source of all bliss, all energy, all nectar is flowing continuously inside your own being. You become an emperor of your own inner kingdom, free from the state of begging forever. All these techniques are different keys to open the same door. They are designed to fit different types of minds, different personal talents. If you are a scientific mind, use the precise methods of breathing and attention. If you are a heart-oriented mind, use the methods of total love and devotion. If you are a primitive, body-oriented mind, use the methods of staring or sucking. But remember, the requirement is always the same. You must be ready to do. You must be ready to put aside your intellectual chatter, your constant verbalizations, and enter into the experiment with total energy. Do not let your mind deceive you by saying that these methods are too simple or too ancient. They are eternal laws of consciousness, as fresh as a morning dewdrop, as potent as an atomic explosion. Practice them with absolute sincerity, with a playful, non-serious spirit, and you will find your center. You will touch your roots in the divine, and you will know the truth that sets you free forever. The rebel is the only hope for humanity. You have been told for centuries that to be a rebel is to be an enemy of society, to be a source of chaos, to be a dangerous element that must be crushed, silenced, or destroyed. But I tell you that the rebel is the greatest friend society can ever have. The society is nothing but a collection of dead habits, of frozen patterns, of stagnant waters. It is the rebel who brings the fresh breeze, the rushing river, the lightning that clears the polluted air. Without the rebel, humanity would have been dead long ago, buried under the weight of its own decaying past. It takes a tremendous amount of courage to be a rebel, not because you have to fight against others, but because you have to fight against your own inner conditioning. You have to be a rebel against the ghost of your own mind. The mind is the most ancient and the most stubborn dragon you will ever encounter. It is filled with all the garbage of the past, with all the prejudices and superstitions that your parents, your teachers, and your priests have poured into you since the day of your birth. To say a sacred no to this conditioning is the first step toward freedom. It is not an act of hate, it is an act of deep, intense love for your own being. It is an act of self-respect. You might think that your mind is yours, but observe it closely and you will find that it is not yours at all. It is a social product, a manufactured commodity. You speak a language you didn't invent. You follow religions you didn't choose. You carry beliefs you never questioned. You live according to moral codes you didn't create. You are a repository of the past. The moment you decide to break this identification, the moment you decide to step out of the crowd, you become an alien in your own society. They will call you mad. They will call you a threat. They will try to put you back in the cage. But you must hold your ground. The path of the rebel is the path of the meditator. You do not need to go to the mountains. You do not need to sit in a cave for years. The real battlefield is within you. The real war is the war against your own unconsciousness. When you sit in silence, when you close your eyes and look inward, you will find a thick, dense fog of thoughts, a continuous mechanical chatter. This is the mechanism of the machine. The mind is a machine, a robot that has been programmed to react in certain ways to certain situations. You are simply a witness, a consciousness trapped inside this robot. The first step of this rebellion is to stop reacting. When someone insults you, the machine wants to hit back. That is a reaction, a conditioned reflex. If you hit back, you are just a puppet in the hands of your past. But if you stop, if you breathe deeply and observe the anger arising in your body, if you feel the fire of the emotion without acting upon it, you have broken the mechanism. You have created a gap between the stimulus and the response. In that gap, you are free. In that gap, you are a master. This gap is the secret of the new man. The new man is not a man who has no emotions. He is a man who is not a slave to his emotions. He feels the anger, he feels the joy, he feels the sorrow, but he remains the master of his inner weather. He is like the sky, which allows the clouds to pass, which allows the storms to rage, but which remains completely unaffected by them. The clouds are not the sky. They are just passing phenomena. The storms are not the sky. They are just events on the surface. Your being is the sky, vast, empty, and eternal. You must understand that the society has a vested interest in your mechanical behavior. A mechanical man is predictable, controllable, and easy to exploit. If you are a machine, the priest knows exactly how to make you afraid. The politician knows exactly how to make you angry. The advertiser knows exactly how to make you buy. They depend on your predictability. But a rebel, a meditator, is unpredictable. You cannot control a person who is centered in himself, because he is no longer seeking his identity in the eyes of others. He doesn't care about your respectability. He doesn't care about your bank accounts. And he doesn't care about your medals of honor. He is sufficient unto himself. When you become sufficient unto yourself, you stop being a beggar. The entire world is full of beggars, beggars for love, beggars for money, beggars for power, beggars for attention. Everyone is holding out a bowl, waiting for someone to put something into it. But you cannot fill an empty vessel from the outside. The vessel is empty because it is disconnected from its own inner source. You must stop looking outside. You must stop waiting for the other to complete you. You are already complete. You were born complete. The idea that you need someone else to be happy is the root of all misery. It is a fundamental lie that has been sold to you since your childhood. You think that when you find the right person, when you find the right job, when you find the right house, you will be happy. But look at those who have found everything. They are the most miserable people on the earth. They have everything and they have nothing. They have gold, but their hearts are made of lead. They have palaces, but they are living in a dungeon. This is because happiness is not a commodity that can be acquired from the outside. Happiness is the fragrance of your own being when it is in harmony with existence. This harmony does not require you to go anywhere. It requires you to be here in the absolute now. But your mind cannot stay in the now. It is constantly vibrating between the regret of the past and the anxiety of the future. It is like a pendulum swinging in the dark. If you want to know the truth, you must stop the pendulum. You must force the mind to stay in the present. And how do you do this? By being intensely aware of every single act you perform. Whatever you are doing, be totally in it. If you are walking, be the walking. Do not be the walker. Do not be the thinker who is thinking about where he is going. Just be the walking, the sensation of your feet touching the earth, the movement of your legs, the flow of your breath. If you are drinking water, be the drinking. Feel the coolness of the water, the thirst, the satisfaction, the touch of the glass. Be totally in the act. If you can make your life a series of total acts, the mind will have no space to weave its dreams. The mind lives on the half-heartedness, on the mechanical repetition, on the habit. If you do everything with total consciousness, the mind will simply fall away. This is the path of the new man. It is a path of creativity, of dance, of spontaneous celebration. Why should you be serious? Seriousness is a disease. Look at the trees, look at the birds, look at the dancing wind. Is there any seriousness in them? They are just existing, just being. And this existence is enough, more than enough. You do not need to achieve anything to justify your life. Your very existence is its own justification. You are here because existence wanted you to be here. You are a unique, irreplaceable melody in the song of the universe. If you were not needed, you would not have been born. Trust yourself. This is the essence of my message. Trust your own being. Trust your own instincts. Trust your own silence. Do not follow anyone blindly. Even if you follow me with open eyes. Follow me as a friend, as a companion, not as a slave. If you follow blindly, you are creating a new religion, a new set of chains, and you will remain a camel, a beast of burden. I want you to be a lion, to be a child, to be a king of your own inner kingdom. Many people ask me, why don't you give us a fixed path? Why don't you give us a set of rules, a dogma that we can follow? I tell them, I cannot give you a path because I am not creating a religion. I am not a prophet. I am just a fellow traveler who has woken up, and I am telling you that you are also asleep, and it is time to wake up. I cannot give you a path because truth is not a path. Truth is your own potential, and you have to discover it within yourself. You have to walk your own journey. I can only point toward the sun. I cannot make the sun shine for you. You have to open your own eyes. This is what I mean by individual growth. There are no collective methods for enlightenment. You cannot be enlightened as a crowd. You cannot be enlightened by joining a church. You cannot be enlightened by paying your tithes. You have to be enlightened as an individual in the solitude of your own being. And that is why it is so difficult, because it requires you to be alone. Not lonely, but alone. Loneliness is the presence of the other. You feel the absence of the other. Aloneness is the presence of yourself. You are full, complete, integrated. Most people are terrified of being alone because when they are alone, they have to face themselves. They have to face the ugly truths, the suppressed passions, the dark skeletons in their cupboards. They prefer the noise of the crowd, the activity of the marketplace, because it provides a screen, a way to forget the emptiness inside. But this emptiness is your potential. This emptiness is the womb of the divine. If you have the courage to stay with this emptiness, if you have the patience to sit in silence and face your own shadows, you will find that these shadows are not your enemies. They are just blocked energies that need to be understood, loved, and transformed. Anger is energy. It is the fire of life. If you suppress it, it burns you from inside. If you express it blindly, it burns others and creates more karma. But if you witness it, if you look at it from the third eye, it transforms into compassion. Sex is energy. It is the biological creativity of existence. If you suppress it, you become a frustrated, neurotic mess. If you indulge in it mechanically, it leaves you depleted and empty. But if you transform it through awareness, if you bring the light of consciousness into the act of love, it becomes a bridge to the ultimate ecstasy, to the state of no mind. Greed is energy. It is the natural hunger to reach out, to expand, to be more. If you use it for accumulation of wealth, it leads to misery. If you use it for the accumulation of awareness, it leads to enlightenment. Everything is energy. Nothing is bad and nothing is good. Your consciousness is the key. The society has been using your energy against you. It has been using your own life force to chain you. It has taught you that you are a sinner, that you are unworthy, that you are just a speck of dust in the eyes of God. It has made you feel so small that you are willing to crawl on your knees for a few crumbs of comfort. But I tell you, you are a God in seed form. You are the universe expressing itself as a human being. There is no heaven anywhere else. Heaven is a state of being here and now. There is no hell anywhere else. Hell is a state of being here and now. You have the power to create heaven, and you have the power to create hell. It depends entirely on whether you are asleep or awake. If you are asleep, you will create hell for yourself and for others. If you are awake, you will create heaven. The world is a reflection of your own inner state. If you are full of love, the world will look beautiful, kind, and full of grace. If you are full of hate, the world will look like a battlefield full of enemies and threats. You are the projector, and the world is just the screen. You can change the movie by changing the film inside your own consciousness. Stop worrying about changing the society. Stop worrying about changing the world. Change yourself. That is the only real revolution. A man who has changed himself is a beacon of light in this dark world. A man who has transformed himself is a silent invitation to millions of others to wake up. Just one person waking up can trigger a chain reaction. A candle is enough to light 1,000 other candles. And you are not just a candle, you are a sun in seed form. The fear of death is another great manipulation. They tell you that you must fear death, that you must prepare for the afterlife. I say to you, do not fear death. Death is not the end of life. Death is just a transition, a beautiful rest between two lives. If you have lived your life fully, if you have squeezed the juice out of every moment, then death is just a homecoming. It is a return to the source. You will experience death not as a tragedy, but as a deep, rejuvenating sleep, after which you will be reborn into a new form, a new opportunity to experience the dance of existence. If you are fully aware in your life, you will be fully aware in your death. If you have practiced the art of dying in your meditation by dying to your ego, by dying to your past, by dying to your future, then death will be the ultimate realization of your immortality. Life is not a static state. It is a river. It is constantly flowing, constantly changing. Only those who cling to the past, those who are afraid of the river's movement, are miserable. The ones who are ready to flow with the river, who are ready to go with the current, are the ones who know the joy of existence. The river is going toward the ocean, and the ocean is the ultimate destination where the individual drop loses its limitation and becomes the infinite sea. Do not be afraid of this loss. It is not a loss. It is the greatest gain. You are losing your small, petty ego to gain the majesty of the whole. You are losing your tiny puddle to gain the vastness of the ocean. So, drop the struggle. Stop trying to improve yourself. Stop trying to become better. Stop trying to achieve goals. Just be. Be like a flower, like a bird, like the rising sun. Just exist. And in this simple act of existing, in this simple act of just being, you will find that the divine has been waiting for you all along. The divine is not a person in the sky. It is the very fabric of existence. It is the silence between your breaths. It is the music in your heart. It is the light in your awareness. You have asked what to do. I say, do not do anything. Just be. The more you do, the more you drift away from your center. The less you do, the more you sink into your own being. It is an act of extreme relaxation, a total letting go. It is not a goal to be attained. It is a reality to be recognized. It is already here. You have just been looking in the wrong direction. You have been looking at the shadows on the wall, and the reality has been standing right behind you, always. Just take a deep breath. Feel the life force, the prana essence entering your lungs, reaching to your heart. Feel it touching your center, the hara, and let go. Let the breath go. Let the thoughts go. let the world go. And in that moment of absolute emptiness, of total void, you will find the truth. And this truth will not be a collection of words, it will be a dance, a celebration, an overflowing joy that will consume your whole life. There are thousands of such simple methods. You don't need to follow a system. You don't need to become a follower of any religion. You only need to be an explorer of your own inner landscape. And remember, the journey is not long. It is just the distance between your head and your heart, and then a small leap into your being. But the leap is a leap into nothingness. You must be ready to lose everything you have ever called your own. You must be ready to be a nobody. Only a nobody can become the whole. Only an empty vessel can be filled by the divine. This emptiness is not a negative state. It is the most positive state possible. It is the fullness of space. Before a house is built, there is space. After the house is destroyed, there is space. The space is always there, eternal and untouched. You are that space. You are the sky, and all your experiences are just clouds. The clouds come and go, but the sky remains. The clouds are not the sky. You are the sky. Why do you get so identified with the clouds? Why do you cry when they are dark? And why do you feel proud when they are white? They are not you. You are the witness, the silent watcher of the entire process. Once you realize this, you have become a master. Then there is no need for any church, no need for any priest, no need for any sacred scripture. The whole universe becomes your scripture. Every bird singing is the divine message. Every flower blooming is the divine beauty. Every breath is the divine life. This is the new man, a man who is scientific in his understanding of the outer world, but absolutely meditative, absolutely religious in his inner core. He is a scientist of the outer and a mystic of the inner. He brings these two worlds together. He bridges the gap between matter and spirit. He creates a world where science and religion are not enemies, but brothers, working together to create a human being who is both a genius and a saint. The old world is dying. Its religions are dead. Its political systems are bankrupt. Its social structures are crumbling. It is a chaotic time, full of danger, but also full of unprecedented opportunity. We are at a turning point in history. The old man is on his deathbed, and it is up to us, to the brave, to the rebels, to the truth seekers, to give birth to the new man. The transition is painful. It requires sacrifice. It requires the death of your ego, but the result is worth all the struggle. The result is the birth of a consciousness that is not bound by any past, that is not limited by any culture, that is perfectly, beautifully, totally free. You are the future. Do not look to the politicians to save you. Do not look to the priests to forgive you. Look within. Everything you need is already planted in your heart like a seed. You just have to create the right environment for it to grow. You have to provide the water, the sunlight, the fertile soil of awareness. And the only way to do that is to be totally present, to be totally alive, to be totally loving. Be a companion to yourself first. Be a friend to your own being. If you can be a friend to yourself, you will never be lonely, you will never be bored, you will never be afraid of death. You will be a center of light in a dark world, and through this center, through your own blossoming, you will help others to blossom. That is the only way to transform the world. You cannot change the world by passing laws. You cannot change the world by winning elections. You can only change the world by changing the consciousness of the individual. Start with yourself. Make your own life a song. Make your own life a dance. Let your own being be a celebration. This is the only way to save humanity from the suicidal urge of the past. The past is a graveyard. Do not keep living in it. Step out of the graveyard. Enter the world of the living. Enter the world of the present. The dawn is not far away, provided you are ready to wake up. The light is shining everywhere, provided you are ready to open your eyes. The truth is calling you, provided you are ready to listen. Be a rebel, be a meditator, be a lover, and in that love, in that meditation, in that rebellion, you will find everything you have ever searched for. You will find that you have arrived home, that you have always been home. This is my message to you. Live life to the fullest. Squeeze every drop of juice out of every moment. And do not be afraid of the unknown. Life is an adventure, a wild, unpredictable, beautiful journey. If you are afraid, you are already dead. If you are brave, you can turn even your death into a crowning glory. Be a player, not a businessman. A businessman is always counting his profit, always worrying about his loss. A player enjoys the game for the sake of the game. If he loses, he enjoys the defeat. If he wins, he enjoys the victory. He is not attached to the result. He is totally dedicated to the process. Life is a game, a divine play. Don't take it too seriously. Don't make it a business. Play it with passion. Play it with laughter. Play it with love. And in this play, you will find the ultimate reality. I see the potential in each of you. I see the Buddha, the Krishna, the Christ waiting behind the mask of your small, petty ego. I am just a mirror, helping you to see what is already there. If my words can provoke you to look inside, my purpose is served. If my silence can help you to fall into your own depths, my work is done. You are not my followers, you are my friends, my companions on the path. We are fellow travelers under the same vast sky, looking for the same stars. Let us make this life a celebration. Let us make this existence a song. Let us make our beings a dance. And together, we can turn this earth into a paradise, a garden where everyone is free, where everyone is happy, where everyone is loving. The time is now, and the place is here. You don't have to wait for any Messiah. You are the Messiah you have been waiting for. Awaken yourself, transform yourself, and you will see that the whole world begins to change around you. The light you are looking for is the light you are carrying inside. Just stop the noise, just stop the running, just stop the begging. Sit in silence, and you will see that you are already the light, you are already the love, you are already the divine. This recognition of your inherent godliness is not something that you can cultivate through effort or practice, because cultivation is always an extension of the false personality. You cannot practice being yourself. You can only stop practicing being someone else. The moment all your practicing comes to an absolute end, the real breaks through the surface like a fresh spring of water. It has always been there, flowing silently beneath the heavy rocks of your social conditioning, waiting for you to look down, waiting for you to remove the earth of your artificial personal projections. You have been running across the globe, searching for a master, searching for a system, searching for a philosophy that can give meaning to your empty life, but the meaning is already present in the very act of your breathing. You are alive, you are conscious, you are part of this magnificent, overflowing cosmic whole, and yet you walk on this earth like an uprooted tree, completely oblivious to your own hidden centers of vitality. This uprootedness exists because you have been trained to live exclusively in your head, completely disconnected from the original center of your biological reality. When a child is born, he is rooted entirely in his navel, in what the Japanese call the hara. Watch a small infant breathing. His chest remains completely still, while his belly moves up and down naturally with every single breath. The child lives through the hara. He is balanced, grounded, at home in his physical form. He doesn't have a mind to think about the past or the future. He is a total organic unity in the present moment. But by and by, the society begins to pull the child away from his natural center. It forces him to develop a second center, which is the heart, the center of artificial emotions. of conditioned loves and mandatory duties. The mother tells the child that he must love her because she is his mother. The father demands respect because he is the father. Love becomes an obligation, a social currency to buy protection and safety. The child's natural, spontaneous flow is corrupted, and he learns to print a false, plastic smile on his face to satisfy the demands of the family. Later on, the educational system takes over completely, and it forces the child to move even further away from his roots into the third center, which is the head, the intellect, the reason. The head is a highly efficient computer, a utility-oriented machine designed to calculate, to compete, to manage your survival in a hostile, aggressive marketplace. The entire modern world is completely head-oriented, and because you live exclusively in your head, you feel a deep, permanent sense of homelessness and empty isolation. The head can only know about things. It can never know things directly. The head can analyze a flower. It can cut it into pieces. It can classify its chemicals. But it can never experience the beauty, the mystery, the living fragrance of the flower. The head is always an outsider, a spectator looking at life through a glass window. You have become a giant head walking on tiny, paralyzed legs, completely cut off from your feelings, completely cut off from your being. This intellectual isolation is what you call being an adult, but it is really nothing but a state of spiritual deadness. You do not grow up, you simply grow old. There is a vast qualitative difference between growing old and maturing. Growing old is a purely chronological, biological process. Any animal can do it without any effort. You just pass through time, your body becomes weak, your cells lose their vitality, and your mind accumulates the dust of dead memories. But maturing means finding your inner center, returning to your original source, becoming a child again, but with the immense radiance of wisdom. A mature man is not a serious man. He has a deep, unshakable sense of humor. He can laugh at himself. He can laugh at the absurdity of human ambitions. He can dance with the trees and sing with the wind because he has transcended the horizontal dimension of time and calculation. He lives vertically, in the absolute present, where every single moment is an eternity. To find this vertical dimension, to return to your original Hara center, you must understand the magnificent synthesis of Zorba the Buddha. This is my vision for the new man. The old world has been completely divided into two opposite, incomplete camps. On one side is the materialist, the Zorba, who believes only in the body, only in the flesh, only in the immediate pleasures of the earth. The Zorba eats well, drinks well, loves women, and dances under the stars, but his life remains shallow, superficial, confined entirely to the material periphery. He has no sky above him, no stars of consciousness to guide his flight. He is full of juice, but he has no fragrance. He has a body, but he has no soul. On the other side is the spiritualist, the monk, the anchorite, who has completely denied the earth, who has renounced his body, his passions, and his world in the name of a hypothetical god. The monk is pale, dry, completely devoid of life juice. He sits in a cave, torturing himself through fasts and disciplines, dreaming of a super-terrestrial paradise after he dies. He thinks he is close to God, but he is really just a suicidal weakling who is terrified of the risk and the spontaneity of life. I tell you, both are incomplete, both are crippled human beings. The new man must be a synthesis of both. He must be Zorba the Buddha. He must have his feet rooted deeply in the rich, muddy earth of his biological reality, and his head reaching far into the silent sky of his ultimate consciousness. He must be a materialist of the highest quality and a spiritualist of the highest peak. There is no contradiction between the two. The earth and the sky are not enemies, they are polar complementaries. The tree needs the dark mud below to find its nourishment, to spread its roots into the deep layers of the earth, so that it can rise high into the sky, catch the sunlight, and blossom into thousands of beautiful roses. If you deny the mud, the tree dies. If you cut off the branches, the tree cannot breathe. You must accept both. Your body is the dark earth, and your being is the silent sky. When you make love to a woman, do not do it like an ordinary, mechanical animal, and do not avoid it like a neurotic, fearful monk. Do it like a Zorba, with total passion, with intense physical joy, with every single cell of your body vibrating with life juice. But let that passion be so total, so absolute, that it turns into a meditation. Let the excitement touch the very roots of your hara center, and there let it dissolve into a deep, passive stillness. Become the valley orgasm, where there is no longer any movement, no longer any friction, no longer any desire to reach an explosive climax. You just remain held in each other's energy fields. Two relaxed presences melting into the cosmic current of existence. In that stillness, the Zorba turns into the Buddha. The physical pleasure transcends itself and becomes a spiritual ecstasy. You realize that the body is not separate from the soul, that matter is nothing but a condensed form of spirit, that this very earth is the playground of the divine. But to live this integrated life, you must have the supreme courage to be an outsider, to walk away from the herd of blind sleepwalkers. The entire structure of human society is designed to prevent this integration because a whole man can never be controlled. The politician wants you to be an aggressive, ambitious egoist, ready to fight for flags and artificial boundaries. The priest wants you to be a guilt-ridden, fearful weakling, ready to drop down on your knees and beg for salvation. They both depend on your internal division. If you are whole, if you are at peace with yourself, if your head and your heart and your being are in a perfect state of harmony, you become unpredictable. You can no longer be driven into the marketplace as a competitive machine. You can no longer be driven into the battlefield as a professional killer. You become a free individual, and your very existence becomes a silent rebellion against all institutionalized interests. Look at the ways of your social programming. Every child is born as a clean, blank slate, an innocent pool of consciousness without any words or descriptions. But the wolves of society descend upon this innocence immediately. They brand the child with a nationality, with a race, with a religion, with a political ideology. They write their prejudices on its pure soul, and they tell the child that this is its heritage. They make the child a Christian, a Hindu, a Muslim, a communist, and they teach it to hate those who are branded differently. This is a supreme crime against humanity. You have been turned into a mechanical robot, repeating the ready-made slogans of dead people, and you call it your culture. Your culture is nothing but a sophisticated cage, a legal prison that has completely destroyed your originality. If you want to know yourself, you must first become a total lawbreaker, a lawbreaker against the conventions and superstitions of your own mind. You must doubt your mind completely. Skepticism is one of the most religious qualities possible when it is directed against your own internal programming. You have been taught to doubt everyone else, to doubt other religions, to doubt other countries, to doubt other masters, but you never doubt your own mind. You follow it blindly, with absolute, unflinching faith, as if it is your ultimate guide. But look at where your mind has brought you. It has brought you into a state of permanent misery, of constant anxiety, of hidden violence and absolute emptiness. Your mind is the real creator of your hell. If you want to find heaven, you must learn to stand apart from your mind, to witness its mechanical movements without any judgment, without any identification. This witnessing is the core science of all meditation. When you sit silently, let your thoughts move before you like clouds moving across a vast sky. Do not say, This thought is good and that thought is bad. Do not try to suppress the angry thoughts or cling to the holy thoughts. Any judgment means you have entered the game of the mind once again. Just remain an indifferent observer, a watcher on the hill. Look at the anger, look at the lust, look at the greed as separate objects moving on a screen. If you can maintain this detached witnessing even for a few minutes, you will see a great phenomenon happening. The thoughts will begin to slow down. The mechanical chatter will lose its momentum and the clouds will begin to disperse. Suddenly, you will find yourself in an empty space, a profound void where there is no mind, no thought, no desire. In this empty space, you are for the first time truly alive. You are at your center, rooted in your hara. From this center, your whole relationship with the world changes radically. You no longer look at people as instruments to be used for your own security or pleasure. You no longer try to possess your wife, your husband, or your children because possessiveness is a local perversion of the mind born out of the fear of your own inner vacuum. When you are full of your own inner being, when your center is overflowing with cosmic life juice, you do not need anything from the other. Your love is no longer a demand, no longer a business transaction. It is an unconditional sharing of your abundance. You give because you have too much. You give because giving is the ultimate joy of a rich soul. A man who has found his center can live in the ordinary world without being corrupted by it. He can run a business. He can be a carpenter. He can be an artist. He can do anything in the marketplace, but his doing remains completely separate from his being. He uses his mind as an instrument when he is working in the shop, but the moment the shop closes, he puts the instrument aside. He doesn't carry the store on his head. He doesn't bring his financial calculations to his bedroom. When he is with his wife, he is simply love. When he is with his children, he is simply play. When he is alone under the stars, he is simply silence. He has a great fluidity, an ability to shift from gear to gear naturally, without any friction, without any internal war. He is the new man, a perfect orchestration of all the human potentials. But the old world is terrified of this new man because he cannot be reduced to a mechanical cog in their social wheel. The old world wants you to remain a castrated camel, a utility-oriented robot that lives on purpose and calculation. You are taught from your very childhood never to waste your time in any purposeless activity. Everything must have a goal, a result, a profit. If you are reading a book, it must be for an examination. If you are making a friend, it must be for a social connection. If you are doing a job, it must be for a bank balance. You can never do anything for the sheer joy of doing it. You have turned your entire life into a business, and because you are always looking at the future goal, you miss the present reality completely. You are always traveling, always running, always chasing after a horizon that keeps receding further away from you. I tell you, life has no purpose, and that is its ultimate grandeur, its absolute beauty. If life had a purpose, it would be a very petty, limited thing. A machine has a purpose. A factory has a purpose. A political organization has a purpose. But existence has no purpose whatsoever. It is a leela, a cosmic game, an overflowing celebration of energy without any motive. The stars are moving for no purpose. The rivers are flowing for no purpose. The flowers are blooming for no purpose. They are just expressing their vital abundance, rejoicing in the very act of existence. When a child runs after a butterfly, he is part of this cosmic game. He is not a businessman looking for profit. He is a player. My message to you is to drop the business mind and become a player once again. Let your life be a purposeless celebration. Squeeze the whole juice out of this present moment without any calculation of what is going to happen tomorrow. Tomorrow is just an illusion of the mind. It doesn't exist. It has never existed, and it will never exist. Whenever existence comes to you, it always comes as the now, as today. If you can live today totally, passionately, with full awareness, you have entered the kingdom of God. You don't need to go to any church. You don't need to read any dead scriptures. You don't need to follow any priests. Your very presence becomes a holy temple. Your very breath becomes a silent prayer of gratitude to the universe. This total relaxation in the present moment is what traditional religions have called death, and that is why they have made you terrified of it. They have turned death into a dark, abysmal monster that is coming to destroy you. But death is not your enemy. Death is your ultimate rest. It is a natural transition, a beautiful homecoming after a long tired life on the periphery. If you have lived your life fully, if you have known the art of being total in every single moment, you will welcome death with open arms, like a friend. You will see your body dissolving, you will see your mind disappearing, but you will remain perfectly conscious as a silent witness to the entire process. You will know that the container is being changed, but the content is immortal. You will experience death not as a destruction, but as a supreme crescendo of your life. But if you live a half-hearted, mechanical life, always postponing your happiness to the future, always acting according to the scripts of others, you will be terrified of death. Because when death comes, you will realize that you have not lived at all. You have spent your entire life just preparing to live, just making arrangements for a tomorrow that never arrived. And now death is standing at the door, and your hands are empty. This fear is not the fear of death, it is the fear of your unlived life. You are afraid because you have been a coward, because you did not take the risk of being yourself. You preferred the safe, comfortable prison of respectability, and now the prison is falling apart, and you are left with nothing but regrets. Wake up before the curtain falls. Do not waste a single moment more in your mechanical sleep. Start practicing awareness in the smallest, most trivial acts of your daily life. When you are taking a shower, feel the cool water touching your skin, become the coolness itself. When you are walking, feel the connection between your feet and the earth, become the movement itself. When you are eating, taste the food with your whole being, become the tasting itself. Put your mind aside, stop the internal commentary, and enter into the facticity of the present moment completely. If you can do this, you will see a great change happening in your inner climate. The tensions will begin to dissolve, the anxieties will disappear, and a deep, unshakable peace will settle in your heart. You will no longer be a beggar for attention, a slave to public opinion. You will become an independent individual, a sovereign being centered in your own hara. You will know that you are not separate from the universe, that you are a unique expression of the divine, and that this very life is a supreme blessing. You will be able to live like a Zorba and die like a Buddha, completing the circle of your existence in absolute bliss. The techniques of Tantra are simple doors to reach this state of total integration. They are not dry disciplines. They are artistic methods to put your mind in neutral so that your real being can take over. Play with them, experiment with them, but do it with an innocent, non-serious spirit. Do not make it a duty. Do not make it another mechanical habit. Let it be a fun, a joyous exploration of your inner landscape. The moment you find the right key, the inner lock will open naturally, and you will enter the world of everlasting life, where there is only celebration, only joy, only love, flowing eternally through the cosmic whole. Tantra stands for a revolution that does not change the object of your desire, but completely alters the quality of the desiring entity itself. When I say that a greedy mind cannot become non-greedy, or that a violent mind cannot become non-violent, I am shaking the very foundation of your traditional moralities. For centuries, your preachers have been telling you to fight your greed, to suppress your anger, and to cultivate their opposites. But who is going to cultivate these opposites? It is the same greedy mind that now desires virtue instead of wealth. It is the same violent mind that now forces itself into a straitjacket of non-violence, practicing a continuous, silent warfare against its own biological reality. This is not transformation. This is just a change of posture, a cunning adaptation to save your false self-image from being shattered. You remain the same, trapped in the same horizontal wheel of time and calculation, always running toward a tomorrow that never arrives. Tantra says that the only way to move beyond your misery is to enter into it completely, to understand it to its very roots. If you are greedy, accept your greed totally. Do not create an ideal of non-greed, because the ideal is a projection of the future, a subtle trick of the mind to escape the reality of the present moment. Sit with your greed, look at it, become a silent witness to its intense pull. When you do not try to change it, when you do not judge it as a sin or praise it as a virtue, the energy that was bound up in the desire is suddenly released. The ego dissolves because the ego can only exist through a conflict, through a continuous struggle between what is and what should be. When the ideal disappears, the reality is left in its absolute nakedness. You are thrown back to your own center, back to your natural suchness, where there is no becoming, but only being. I remember an old story about a wealthy man who was so obsessed with his own respectability that he spent his entire life practicing public charity. He built temples, he donated money to the poor, he followed every discipline prescribed by the high priests of his town. Everyone worshipped him as a great saint, a holy soul, but deep down, he was a miserable, anxious wreck. One night, he came to a mystic and said that he was tired of his life, that despite all his virtues and all his public honor, his heart remained empty, a dark desert. He asked the mystic to give him a mantra, a secret formula to find peace. The mystic looked at him and laughed. He said, "You have been practicing goodness for 50 years, and your goodness has only made you a sophisticated hypocrite. You are still the same greedy man. It is only that now you are bargaining for a place in heaven instead of a profit in the market. Drop all your charities, drop your prayers, drop your holy disciplines. Go back to your house and for 1 week be a completely honest, greedy man. Don't hide it, don't cover it up with beautiful masks. Just look at your greed in its total facticity." The man was terrified. He said, "If I do that, my self-image will be ruined. The crowd will no longer respect me, and my family will think I have gone mad." The mystic replied that your respectability is your imprisonment, your holiness is your chains. If you want to remain a respectable corpse, it is up to you. But if you want to be alive, You must have the supreme courage to drop the mask and face your own reality. The man hesitated, but his suffering was so deep that he decided to try. For 1 week, he closed the doors of his house and allowed himself to feel his greed totally, without any judgment, without any prayer to change it, and a great miracle happened. By the 3rd day, as he sat silently watching the fierce hunger of his mind, the hunger began to lose its power. He saw that his greed was nothing but a desperate attempt to fill an inner vacuum, a black hole that could never be filled from the outside. The moment he understood this, the pendulum of his mind stopped moving. The greed evaporated like smoke, and a profound, unshakable silence settled into his soul. He was born anew, not as a cultivated saint, but as an innocent child. This is the alchemical secret that traditional religions have completely missed. They have taught you to treat your natural instincts as your enemies, and in doing so, they have created a humanity that is deeply sick, paralyzed by hidden perversions and manufactured guilt. They want you to be a castrated camel, a utility-oriented robot that lives exclusively in the head, completely cut off from the heart, completely cut off from the being. They are terrified of a man who is whole, because a whole man can never be reduced to a slave. A whole man carries his own light. He follows his own inner law. He is a rebel who refuses to belong to any herd, any nation, any organized church. My vision for you is the synthesis of Zorba the Buddha. This is the new man, the only hope for the survival of this beautiful planet. The old world has been divided into 2 incomplete, crippled camps. On one side is the materialist, the Zorba, who enjoys the body, the flesh, the pleasures of the earth, but who lives without any vertical dimension, without any sky, without any soul. He is full of juice, but he has no fragrance. On the other side is the spiritualist, the monk, who has denied the earth, who has tortured his body, who has suppressed his passions in the name of a distant god. He is dry, rigid, completely pale. He has a soul, but his soul is like a dead ghost with no body to dance through. I tell you, both are incomplete. The new man must be an orchestration of both. He must have his feet rooted deeply in the rich mud of the earth, like a Zorba, and his consciousness reaching far into the silent sky of ultimate realization, like a Buddha. There is no opposition between the earth and the sky. The tree can only rise high toward the stars if its roots move deeply into the dark, silent layers of the mud below. The mud is the source. The mud contains the life juice that will one day blossom into thousands of beautiful roses. To condemn the mud is to destroy the flower. To deny your physical reality, to hate your biological instincts, is to cut off your own roots. As you sit here with me in this silent oasis of awareness, listening to these words, letting my presence seep into your heart like a cool morning breeze, you are becoming part of a new commune of consciousness. We are not an organization. We are just fellow travelers, seekers of truth, who have gathered together to share our abundance, to dance madly, and to sing our unique melodies under the boundless sky. If this resonance touches the deepest core of your being, if it breaks your old chains and gives you a glimpse of your original face, then let this gratitude flow outward naturally. Share this video with those who are still fast asleep. Subscribe to this space of meditation and leave a reflection of your own inner journey in the comments below. If you feel an overflowing of love and wish to support the continuity of this work, to help this flame of rebellion reach more thirsty souls across the earth, you are always welcome to engage with us more closely. You can click the official join button to become a part of our global family, or offer your love through super thanks. Let these gestures be an expression of your joy, a sharing of your inner riches, completely free from any mercantile calculation. The ordinary man is continuously living a life of reaction, not of action. Your mind works like a pre-programmed computer. You have a collection of fixed habits, of structured responses that you repeat mechanically year after year. If someone insults you, you get angry. If someone praises you, you feel proud. You are not a free individual. You are just a machine that can be operated by anyone who knows which button to push. Your wife knows your buttons, your boss knows your buttons, your politicians know your buttons. They operate you easily, and you go on believing that you are free. This predictability is your slavery. Tantra says break the automation of the machine. Start doing simple things in a completely new, unpredictable way. If you are used to walking fast when you are nervous, slow down your pace completely. Walk with absolute awareness, paying attention to the contact between your feet and the earth. The mechanical mind will get confused because it has no program for a slow, attentive walk. It will simply fall silent. If your wife starts the old argument, do not repeat the old, predictable dialogue. Do something completely absurd, hug her, smile at her, or sit silently in a lotus posture and become a Buddha. The whole pattern will be shattered immediately, and in that shattering, a new consciousness will enter the room. All the techniques we have been exploring are nothing but simple devices to put your mind in neutral, to disconnect the false actor from the moving machinery of the past. When you lie down on your bed at the moment of sleep, you have a rare opportunity to pass through the doors of eternity. Sleep is a daily miniature death. Every single night, your conscious mind dissolves your social status, your bank balances, your professional masks all disappear. You return to the same primal innocence that you carried in your mother's womb. If you can fall into sleep while being deeply aware of the invisible, intangible prana entering your heart with every single breath, you will transcend the world of dreaming. You will become awake inside your sleep. You will see the dreams moving on the screen of your mind, but you will know that you are the watcher, the separate seer. And when your dreams become voluntary, when they can no longer deceive you with the illusion of reality, dreaming stops completely. You enter into a state of absolute, profound void shunya. This shunya is your real home. It is from this void that you have grown into the world, and it is into this void that you will return at the moment of your death. A man who has known the beauty of dreamless, conscious sleep loses all fear of death. He knows that death is just a long, deep, rejuvenating rest, a necessary transition to dissolve the old, tired container and start anew with a fresh, youthful body. He passes through the gates of death with wide open eyes, completely awake, completely integrated. He becomes the master of his own birth and his own destiny. He is no longer a passive slave to blind biological currents. He is a conscious creator of his own reality. This supreme freedom is already your nature. You do not need to create it. You do not need to achieve it in some distant future. You are already that which you are seeking. The kingdom of God is right inside you, right here and now. But you have been looking in the wrong direction. You have been looking at the periphery, trying to possess things, trying to dominate people, trying to find your identity in the false mirror of public opinion. Drop the looking outside and turn your gaze inward. Close your eyes, let your mind be silent, and enter into the absolute facticity of this present moment. Let go of all your definitions, all your conditionings, all your past regrets and future anxieties. Just be simple, innocent, complete. You can find our ebook, The Hidden Energy Protocol, Reclaim Your God Mode, in the description below to completely change your life.